killed the market for, of course. So now this had killed the market for, of course.
Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Watching us here on Blackwood Fire Network. Today is a beautiful Thursday, and it is 18th of July 2024. Yeah, we are broadcasting live from Kampala, Uganda. That's where we're broadcasting live from. And Maria, how are you?
I'm fine naye bukyanga nzijjanga buli lwe ndya emmere sikkuta. Simanyi nakyantuuseeko naye nga ndi fine. Owambadde etya?
So, before we go any further, I would like actually I would like to thank those that always watch us here on Blackwood Fire Network through our channels, and that is Blackwood Fire Network 2 and other Blackwood Fire Network channels on YouTube. On Facebook, that is Blackwood Fire Radio Station, and also on Twitter, it is Blackwood Fire Network 1. Thank you for watching, and today being a Thursday, actually, our discussion today is going to be of course, tunnel. It's going to, of course, rotate around Uganda, where we are broadcasting live from. Yeah, today's topic is about the British atrocities in Uganda that are still bleeding among the people. So, before actually I go deep into this topic, I would like to share a certain video. Actually, Maria is the one actually who made this video some years back. And,
Naye omulala ojja kwekubya.
and I guess and I guess you're going to enjoy this video. It's about actually it has a lot of things connected to what the British people did here. Actually, some people think like people forgot of actually these things that happened during colonial period, but these things are still breathing fresh in in people's minds. So I would like to share this video. It was Maria, of course.
No,
does it happen here? Like I told you before, there are lots of regions here. It's bisected and divided into different regions, like under one kingdom. I'm going to tell you about the next kingdom. Actually, directly Rico is the kingdom where oil has been found here in Uganda, and most people call it the oil street sometimes. But yeah, before we proceed with the matter on the table today, let's continue. So this very man who's going to talk to you is the main man behind this issue, and Alba. So he's the one who's going to be telling us a lot about what we need to know about this particular kingdom of the struggle and the operation from the government and those in power.
Yeah, I'm called Nathaniel Rico. I'm the CEO of an organization called Bunyoro Guitar Operation Agency, Rocket Directorship. This organization was
kati
set
oba
up
watadde kulira ki
to address the fundamental rights of the indigenous people of Bunyoro sub-region. We are the people who resisted colonialism with our forefathers, but we paid a price when the British government raided our ancestors and killed a tune of 2.4 million from this homeland and subjected others to forced assimilation, including devastating our cattle, robbing our timbers, robbing everything, and then subjected our ancestral land into alien land tenure systems. Until today, we are faced with that problem. That's why we decided to use courts of law to try to address this historical injustice which has refused to be addressed for more than 57 years since this country got independence. That's why we are operating in this sub-region. This sub-region is comprised of 8 districts. But now, even the land that was annexed to Uganda is bigger uh, than what we occupied under the agreement which was drawn between the Buganda allies and the Queen of England that still affects us now. We are in courts of law in order to adjudicate and get judicial declarations over this historical justice that has been politicized for so many years since this country got independence in 1962. We have seen if we don't address this, even the future of Uganda is nowhere. Because you cannot build the foundation of the country based on a lie.
Mm-hmm.
So many things we have discovered that even the governments or the presidents of this country are actually administrators of the colonial.
Exactly.
They were told, as if actually, I was told there is an agreement which any president of Uganda signs before he's allowed to be the president of this republic separately in London. And that's why each and every election, the president has to fly to London and append his signature to that. These things are real. We want the world to know. People knew that Hitler killed so many Jews, and they thought that was the worst genocide. We are now telling the world British soldiers killed 2.4 million Banyoro here, subject the rest into forced assimilation. They did all sorts of things to our ancestors. And that's why we are fighting for
I think Innocent will be joining us shortly. Yeah, he had texted me here. So the electricity in the studios in Kampala not stable right now, so it's on and off, but it's, I guess we'll come back. Um, it's crazy how he even played that video. But anyway, thank you so much for those who are just joining us here on Black Fire Network. It's Africa Maria. This time around, I'm not broadcasting live from Kampala, but I'm in a place called the Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom, actually, and it's in the western part of Uganda. Is where you find Toro Kingdom, Bunyoro Kingdom. Yeah, all right. It's where you find the ancient kingdoms of East Africa. Actually, it's my ancestral home, I should say. So, British atrocities in Uganda, and Uganda still bleeds now. This, I wasn't prepared for this topic, but this topic is, some of situations that happen back in Africa. Um, at times, it's very hard for me to discuss some of the things because they affect me so directly that. I get so emotional when I'm talking about these kind of things. But you know, the existence of the colonizers in Africa will forever remain in Africa no matter what we do. The existence of colonizers has changed the face of Africa. It has changed the entire African system. And given everything that still exists now, it is very hard for us to say that we shall wake up and overcome this because the scars are extremely deep to the point that we have some people who are extremely displaced, people who have lost their own identity in Africa, by the way. When we are talking about identity, usually we focus on Africans who are in diaspora. But I can tell you, we've got a lot of Africans in Africa who have lost their identity. They even don't know where their ancestors come from. They even don't know what to fight for. Some of them cannot even speak their own language. They even don't know what happened before and who they are. And if you don't know your root, you can never know who you are. I remember there is a time when I first started working here on Black Fire Network, by the way. Sorry, that was INNOSSETU. Okay, sorry. Um, when a lot of people are lost in this during, a lot of people are lost because of what really happened. Um, and the funniest thing is that, okay, there it is. The funniest thing of this all is that
I'm
the
back. I'm back.
people
I'm
who
back.
tried, want you.
I'm back.
Man,
So,
somebody just playing a video. Try it.
where did you share?
Mukama wo ajja kugoba. So like, okay, you're going to do that. Nice.
Now, as it happened,
Kitambuzeeko maaso.
gets bisected and
They could.
divided into different regions, like under one
Tambuzaako.
kingdom. Now, he was trying to tell you about
Papa
the next region.
obadde.
Actually, to Bradley Wiggles is the kingdom where oil has been found here in Uganda, and most people call it the oil city sometimes. But yeah, before
Tambuzako
we
naawe.
proceed with the maps that are on the table today, let's continue. So this very man is going to talk to you is the
Leke
main man
naawe.
behind this issue, and Alva. So he's the one who's going to be telling us a lot about what we need to know about this particular kingdom and the struggle and the operation from the government and those in power. Please.
Yeah, I'm called Bataledo Rico. I'm the CEO of an organization called Bunyoro Kitara Liberation Agency, bracket Tarepa. This organization was strictly registered to address the fundamental rights of the indigenous Manyoro in the Manyoro sub-region. We are the people who resisted colonialism with our forefathers, but we paid a price when the British government raided our ancestors and killed a tune of 2.4 million from this homeland and subjected others to forced assimilation, including devastating our cattle, robbing our timbers, robbing everything, and then subjected our ancestral land into alien land tenure systems. Until today, we are faced with that problem. That's why we decided to use courts of law to try to address this historical injustice which has refused to be addressed for more than 57 years since this country got independence. That's why we are operating in this sub-region. This sub-region is comprised of 8 districts. But now, even the land that was annexed to Uganda is bigger uh, than what we occupy under the agreement which was drawn between the Buganda allies and the Queen of England that still affects us now. We are in courts of law in order to adjudicate and get judicial declarations over this historical justice that has been politicized for so many years since this country got independence in 1962. We have seen if we don't address this, even the future of Uganda is nowhere
Exactly.
because you cannot build the foundation of the country based on a lie.
Mm-hmm.
So many things we have discovered that even the governments or the presidents of this country are actually administrators of the colonial.
Exactly.
They were told, as if actually, I was told there is an agreement which any president of Uganda signs before he's allowed to be the president of this republic separately in London. And that's why each and every election, the president has to fly to London and append his signature. That these things are real. We want the world to know. People knew that Hitler killed so many Jews, and they thought that was the worst genocide. We are now telling the world British soldiers killed 2.4 million Banyoro here, subject the rest into forced assimilation. They did all sorts of things, including force them to change their names, renaming their villages, baptizing them. Actually, even went to the religion,
To religion
the religion,
section.
yes. Even the priests by then could not actually baptize a child having a Kinyoro name. So it was war.
Hold on there. Now,
Yes.
if you listen to this strongly, we've had these very ideas happening where in the United States of America, where the black people have been marginalized and so much surprised to the way that they do not have their ancestral names, and that's why black people really don't know where they come from. I feel like this was trying to be brought here on this strong kingdom. By the way, for the record, this is one of the greatest kingdoms in entire of the world, I should say. But it was marginalized and so suppressed by the colonizers and the government, which is acting in response with the colonizers at hand. But yes, when he tells us that the names, they were not allowed to be baptized having their native names, that means they did not want them to have their identity as people from this kingdom. Should we have that raises a question of you, the viewers? Did the British want to strictly and successfully accomplish in finishing this entire kingdom with no location or with no identification and to make it perish from the entire surface of this world? That's the question actually I posed in my mind when he told me they used not to allow them to have their native names when they are being baptized, because our native names identify and signify who we are and where we come from.
Even going to school, by the way, it was war. You wouldn't have gone to school with a Kenyan name. They would not allow. But actually, we have just discovered that the Britain was avoiding of any civilized Munyoro who would dig into their archives and found out all this genocide that was committed here. After committing this genocide, the British directed, and it is still, and their directive is still operational, that most of our ancestral land being turned into game reserves, forest reserves, because our ancestors used to build in a communal process.
Mhm.
One clan could like occupy a square mile, and another one can occupy another 2 square miles. So we were actually we used to build in clans.
Mm.
So these people came and raided those lands as they are being organized and built. And then after killing all of them, they directed that now this land is now a forest reserve. Even up to today, you will find in a country called Uganda, it is only Bunyoro sub-region that has the most, I mean, so many forest reserves and game reserves in this country, Uganda. But what were they trying to do? They were intending to hide so that this forest could actually the trees can grow up and bury the skulls of these people
Or the
of
genocide
the
acts
genocide so
that
that the
happened.
evidence would cease. And indeed, when these people dig in these game reserves, they discover a lot of skulls.
Yeah,
Skeleton, so yes, yes, broken pots and everything, knives and everything. So this is where what they were intending to hide. But the good thing we have uncovered it, and when we brought it to the light of the world, the Queen was here in 2007. She decided to conceal this through the government and directed that a amount equivalent to 700 million pounds be channeled through the government, the central government, and be given to us in order to silence other colonial areas where these people committed crime so that we should not awaken them. Now we want the world to know.
So now
We
we
are
are
now awakening the world actually by doing
mm,
this.
yeah, hold on.
Yes.
So now we are looking at the major funny, I should call it a little bit funny, but again so very appalling and astounding. When you look at the Queen herself coming along in this very country and trying to bribe these people not to speak out what actually
Exactly.
happened. I always tell you that we do not sell who we are, and you an African, and more especially Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom, is not out for sale. We do not negotiate our heritage, and they do not negotiate who they are. They're here to protect their legacy. So it's so very quite appalling for the king herself to come down and think that he's going to give them all that sum of money, which was later. Let him continue telling you what
Of
happened
course,
that
the
money.
money was channeled through the government, and the government decided to use it. Without shame, the government decided to use the 700 million pounds that it was supposed to have been paid to us as preparation fees, and then use it for itself. So we are actually calling the British. We are calling on the British citizens. It was Gordon Brown, by then who was the prime minister, who concluded this with the foreign affairs minister of Uganda and with a group of politicians from the Euro sub-region who had no mandate even to
To
conclude
decide.
it to decide the deal between us and the Queen. and directed the funds money. It never reached us. That's why we are constituting a team. We have already constituted a team of QCs in London to take over this case afresh against the Queen of England. We cannot sit behind and be judged by the evils done by the British. This Bunyoro Kitara kingdom has a history of more than 3,000 years ago. We had everything. We were making our iron ore, we had our medicine, we have everything. But what the British did when they could come here, they used to cut people from here, from this,
From the leader horizon.
yes, and then from the thighs of their legs, and then they leave people to bleed until they die.
To that. Well, we should be making a
Yes,
documentary
we
about
want
this
the world
very
to know,
matter.
and we want the world. We are actually calling the world to come to our rescue. When we are trying to fight, government is interfering. Government agencies are interfering with us because the money that they got. I think now they feel so shame. They cannot vomit the money, and they cannot tell the queen, no, we never passed over this money to these people. So we are now being seen as if we are a threat to the
Like
government.
they're being seen like rebels who
Yes,
are going
exactly.
against
Yeah.
the
Because
government.
of doing the right thing.
Mm.
Yes. So what we are going to, I mean, what we swear not to do, we are not going to give up. We are not going to give up. It's our right. We have to protect our ancestral heritage. We have to protect our culture. When we started praising and like doing our cultural things, calling our ancestors to come, a certain minister called the Ernest Kisa of Your Affairs started going to the radios, started using RDCs and the police to read us and do everything. You know, we are under.
They're
I
under
think
political
it is
attack,
a,
I
yes,
should
we are
say.
under a political attack. Exactly, we are also under a system which is intended to dispossess us from this region because they have discovered huge deposits of oil, uranium, and natural gas.
You're holding that.
Yes.
Now, if you look at, like you say, the government is so very much trying to depose, I mean, to get them, to depossess them and move them away from this very place because a lot of minerals have been discovered in this very land. By the way, to make a note and remind you that this is a place on the record, by the way, I should call that, and I should be a little bit precise and critically emphasize on this. On the record, this is a place where the fastest series was introduced in the entire world before all your doctors knew how to have surgeons and make women get back. This is the kingdom you're all hear about. All these surgeons and all this giving back, this various kind of bath was discovered from this place in this particular place. So this place is very prominent and it is a very historical. It was civilized before even the white man came here. But yeah, like we all know what we do to us. I know you're watching of it. Thank you very much for watching and staying around here. We really have a lot of things to get you away, but I think we should well continue a little bit as you also wait for this documentary on how the British people massacred the people of this place with the meat and Pence Africa. And I'm going to bring this your way shortly. But it's
So, that was, of course, uh, that is, uh, an interview that Maria made some years back in his region about he was trying to ask these people that, of course, that are pioneering, of course. They are people that were pioneering. Actually, I don't want to speak for you. I don't want to speak for you. So you can briefly tell us about that man. Is he the one that is pioneer, like is leading? Of course, those people that, of course, are asking for compensation in your area. What? Soko tunyonyole bulungi.
I beg your pardon. I need like what?
I'm like asking. We are seeing that guy. He said that he's leading a certain organization that is doing what? What? Like, I want to know.
Yeah, actually, there is an organization here that is called Talipa, and it fights for the reparation of the Kitara Kingdoms, and he's the founder of that organization actually. And he has a team of different people, and they've ever taken, by the way, that interview got me in trouble, really. In a lot of content within that area that I couldn't post because, and I still have those.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay, Williams, you've been here for long, man. That interview, I think there were some things I was digging out that I don't want to talk about the things because, but it's okay. So there was a group of people who, of course, who are in an organized organization. And this is actually one time they took Great Britain to court. They compensated, I don't know why this person is calling, and they were compensated. Unfortunately, the government of Uganda, because the money came through the government of Uganda and the president, I guess, took the money obikyali. So kwogeraho katono n'omuntu ankubira tagenda kunzikiriza kukola ki kwogera kansooke mu dismissing.
I have a lot of questions to ask you about that video, but when we talk about before we go to atrocities that were made by these British people, when we talk about the protectorate of Uganda, the protectorate of Uganda was, of course, a protectorate of the British Empire from 1894 to 1962, when Uganda, of course, got independence. By 1893, the Imperial British East Africa Company transferred its administration rights of territory consisting mainly of the Kingdom of Uganda to the British governments. And in 1894, the Uganda Protectorate was established. And the territory was, of course, extended beyond the borders of Uganda to an area that roughly corresponds to the present day Uganda. The background history about or the entire thing is that in the mid 1880s, we see that the Kingdom of Uganda was divided between four religious factions. Those are the adherents of the Uganda's native religion, Catholic, Protestants, and Muslims. So each vying for political control. And by 1888, Mwanga II, this was the king of Uganda, was ousted in a coup led by a Muslim faction who installed Kalema as a leader. The following year, a Protestant and a Catholic coalition formed to remove Kalema and return, of course, Mwanga II to power. The coalition secured an alliance with the Imperial British East Africa Company and succeeded in ousting Kalema and, of course, reinstating Mwanga in the 1890s. The Imperial British East African Company sent Frederick Lugard to, of course, Uganda as a governor. It sent Frederick Lugard to Uganda in the 1890 as its chief representative and to hold maintain the peace between the competing factions in Uganda that were there. So religion, before I go any further, religious differences started long time T. Religious differences started long time T in Uganda. Actually, the religious differences, as long as religion was introduced here in Uganda, religious differences started. Maria, I don't want to go any further before you explain very well about that video.
You can't be serious.
No, no, because actually all what we are going to discuss to rotates about that video. If I'm to see, because I've seen a lot of like a lot of things in that video which are like are having question marks. The guy in the video talked about the Ugandan government being given money to suppress or to bribe those people that were standing up to expose British atrocities in your region. Kitegeera? So that is a question. The guy talked about how different governments in Africa, actually the former, of course, colonial country, actually countries that are former, that are British, former, of course, where British was existing as a colonial master. The guy said that these countries, the president saying to be presidents in those countries, that thing has also question mark for you. However, you have been explaining about that guy's company and the actually what he leads. So that's what you have been explaining about by the time you went for a commercial break.
What exactly? Okay, okay.
And Jagala, I want you to like to explain them in bits, starting from what does that guy do and how strong is the organization. Apparently, for me, I've learned about that guy from you, from that interview that you had with him. Prior, I didn't know about that guy.
First of all, when you went offline, I was trying to explain something. That the operation of the British still exists in different countries and different regions of Africa, and among this region, the Kitara Kingdom, or the dynasty of Bunyan Kitara was also among, and it's still going through this. Apart from that man, I may even say few people know the king of that area. Apart from the things that are discovered in that area, like oil, gold, national parks, waterfalls, mountains, among the few that people don't know what really exists in that particular area, because if you hear from that interview, the man still recognizes that region like one of the region that resisted colonial rule. And actually, this is not something that is written in the history. When people are looking at places that were colonized, no one believes that there are places in Africa that refused to be colonized, places that refused to sign treaties with the British, places that refused to have British influence, places that did not welcome the British, places that even after some time, it was when they exiled most of these people that the British started coming in these areas forcefully. Now, these people were so much suppressed, and it was important for the British to keep suppressing this entire region, all right, and using different leaders who came into power in Uganda to make sure that they suppress these people. And probably this is why, Innosetu says, I've never heard of this guy, and probably I've got to learn this guy. This guy has been on different televisions here in Uganda. He has been invited, he has appeared on tabloids, he's appeared on different, because of like what they have been doing around. And this guy is usually in a hide. So that's why it's usually in a hide. At many times they have sent like people to arrest him, and there was a time when he was arrested and again released because the British could not, people started demonstrating and they had to release him. Now, when you look in most of this is not only happening in Uganda, but also elsewhere. we have most of the kingdoms that most of the people see. Because if we start to mention the kingdoms, of course, someone is going to mention, no, we got this kingdom and the other. The most influential kingdoms, or the prominent kingdoms that all people know outside or inside Africa, these are the kingdoms that were actually, these are kingdoms that were not only promoted or created by the British or the colonizers, but they also supported colonial rule. And this is why they are written in the history of Africa, and this is why they still exist up to now. But the truth still remains because most of the African history is real. Than hold on a little. Most of the Africa's history is real for sure. So Innocent was asking like, what does that man do? That man is someone who lives life like normal people. And at times and by the way, he's not educated. Let me now tell you something funny about that dude. He has even never been to class. That dude
He
has
has
even
never been to
been
class.
to any Muzungu school. He grew up in a typical African system. His parents did not believe in the European education system. His family does not believe in the European education system. Despite he can speak French, he can speak English, he can speak German, he can speak those languages, and he has never been to class, not even the first class, not even elementary school, right? But so you can try to imagine. He is someone who is the way I saw him, because first of all, having that interview, I moved to different places. He took me to a lot of cultural places. And by the way, I joined his organization, first of all. Secondly, he took me to his own home. It is so traditional, not like Versace to Saf Mashaka, we are and all stuff. But I can say the people believe in him, and he's at times he has issues still with the leaders of the area because most of them they have to comply, they have to beg, they have to comply with the law of the government, which he does not do. Now, the current president of Uganda, of course, if you want to exist in power, he apparently runs like all the entire area. Though he says we have got kingdoms, it's like he's the one running these kingdoms. Sorry. So most of these kings we see, or the chiefs, or the emperors, in these different dynasties, it is still the government that runs this place. Now, when you find someone who is standing out to reject what the government is offering, because for them they believe the government is giving them little of what they should be, of course, having. First of all, most of the riches in the country are over there. Secondly, they have got a lot of physical features that attract tourists and all that. But what the government did, by the way, was to have the biggest military bases around their area. So you can see the strategy. You can see how these people strategize everything. They have the biggest training school over there, the biggest infantry military over there. They have got the biggest prison.
Yeah, it's freezing. But there is an issue that guy talked about that was so touching. Uh, the guy said that the British, of course, massacred almost 2.4 million people in Maria's area. Because when we look at the entire Uganda, actually it is my area that embraced the British, and the Maria side, that is the side that, of course, denied the British conquest or imperialism in their area. So the guy in the video, in the interview, said that these British people massacred almost 2.4 million Ugandans that side. Actually, a lot of people think, of course, the British did not rule, did not have that harsh kind of rule. But my dear, the British rule was more harsh actually than I can't even rank it. I can't even finalize with ranking it. The British Empire was much worse than you can realize, because the world's biggest colonial power prided itself on being on liberal democracy, and was this and of course this was the part of the problem, the so-called liberal democracy. So I was still talking about, of course, how Uganda becomes a British protectorate, and of course, I talked about how, of course, the British, of course, East African Company transits power, and of course brings Frederick Lugard to lead Uganda in the 1980s as the chief representative, and to help maintain the peace between the competing factions. Between, of course, when the Bazungus came here, of course, the Bazungus, the Arab stuff, religious differences started immediately. People started fighting against religious basis. So now they sent this Frederick Lugard in Uganda to keep peace and maintain peace between the competing factions that were within, of course, Uganda by that time. Because, like I said, religious wars started immediately. As long as foreign religion was introduced here, fighting divisions started immediately, because someone had to be at a certain part. That was the guy, that's what the guy was saying. That in, of course, in Maria's region, people were forced into forced assimilation. People were baptized forcefully. You have to be baptized. You have to be named an English name or a British name forcefully, and you have to be baptized forcefully. That's what the guy was talking about. So in 1891, we see that Mwanga concluded a treaty with Frederick Lugard, whereby Mwanga would place his land and, of course, tributary states under the protection of the British East African Company. And in 1892, having, of course, subdued the Muslim faction, the Protestants and the Catholics resumed their struggle for supremacy, which led to civil war in Uganda during that time. So that same year, we see that the British government extended their support for IBICO to maintain the Uganda until 1893. So despite of the strong opposition to getting involved in Uganda, the government felt that the withdrawal of British influence would lead to war, and it led to fellow European powers encroaching on Britain's sphere of influence in East Africa, shared with Germany in the 1890s. So we see that the IBICO formally ended the involvement in Uganda. Now we see missionaries led by, of course, Alfred Tucker, of course, lobbied the British government to take over the administration of Uganda in place of the IBICO. So arguing that the British withdrawal would lead to a continuance of the civil war that was going on in Uganda. It was a religious war, not even a civil war. So, which was between the different religious factions. So it can't be a civil war when it is these were religious wars between that time. So shortly after Sir Gerald Portal, a representative of the British government on the ground in Uganda, proposed a plan of double, of course, chieftainships. So whereby every chieftainship would have one, of course, Protestant and one Catholic chief. You see how these Bazungus of course, created administration based on religion. Like in administration, let's represent someone who let's represent a Muslim. Let us represent. Let us bring, of course, a Protestant a representative in the government. Let us bring a Catholic representative in the government. This is how actually these people uh, uh, built, or of course, this is how these people built that foundation for religion in Uganda during that time. So we see that, of course, in 1893, the British government and the chiefs of Uganda signed a treaty giving effect to this plan. So the British government declared Uganda would come under British protection as a protectorate. And of course, from 1894 to 1901, the Uganda Agreement of 1900, where all the problems Uganda is going through, actually, you get all the problems that Uganda, including my area where I come from, this is where the problems come from. The Uganda Agreement of 1900. This solidified the power of the largely Protestant Bakungu client chiefs led by Kagwa. London sent only few officials to administer the country, so relying primarily on the chiefs. So for decades, they were preferred because of their political skills, their Christianity, their friendly relations with the British, their ability to collect tax on behalf of the British, and of course the proximity to Entebbe, where where the Uganda colonial capital was. So to Uganda capital, by 1920s, the British administrators were more confident and had less need for military or administrative support. So colonial officials taxed cash crops in Uganda produced by peasants because it wasn't during that time, it wasn't the people of Uganda actually during that time that it was their decision to grow cash crops. People used to depend uh, okay, come here, move.
Okay, let me do that.
So I was saying that when the British came here, they forced people to grow cash crops. On top of people growing cash crops, they would tax these cash crops. So um, uh, we see that there was popular discontent among the Baganda rank and, of course, file. So, where weakened the position of their leaders, and of course, in 1912, we see that Kagwa moved, this was a chief, moved to solidify Bakungu power by proposing the second Lukiko. Or a Lukiko is a meeting, that is a Luganda name, for Baganda with himself as the president and other chiefs as a sort of hereditary, of course, aristocracy. So British officials, sorry, halted the idea when they discovered widespread popular opposition. Instead, British officials began some reform and attempted to make the meeting a genuine representative assembly. Um, so, although, of course, momentous change occurred during the colonial era in Uganda, some, of course, characteristics of the late 19th century African society survived to reemerge at the time of independence. So the status of protectorate had significantly different consequences for Uganda than had the region been of course, made a colony like the neighboring Kenya, insofar as Uganda retained the degree of self-government that would have otherwise been limited under the full colonial administration. So colonial power, however, affected local economic system dramatically, in part because the first concern of the British was of course was financial, quelling in 1897, where Sudanese mutiny under the leadership of the Protectorate Commissioner George Wilson had been costly. So units of the British Indian Army had been transported to Uganda at considerable expense. So the new commission of Uganda in 1900, that was Sir Harry H. Of course, Johnston, had the orders to establish an efficient administration and to levy taxes in Uganda as quickly as possible. So Johnston approached the chiefs in Uganda with offers of jobs in colonial administration in return for their collaboration. So this is where, of course, African chiefs sold out African people because they were promised. Jibijaba says, hello, hi family. Yes, hello, Jibijaba. How
Abuuliza
are you doing?
ebinnamya sharing oba Jibijaba atadde
Ate
tewali
biki
atadde
byongereza?
anti ze bwe manti zooka kusharingirawo n'endaba byeno we bijja
Oba olina okubeera mugumiikiriza n'okalinda ekifaananyi ne kijja.
Okay.
So Jibijaba says, hi family, how are you doing? Yes, Jibijaba, how are you doing today? We're talking about British atrocities in Uganda that are still breeding in people's. Actually, before I go any further, the guy still talked about the guy you had an interview with. You had the interview with talked about people being, of course, massacred and, of course, thrown into forests in your areas. To talk it about.
There is, like I said, when the British, you can, throughout the history, you realize that most of these kingdoms or groups of people that were against the British, some of them ended up being killed. They would burn like the entire village. And from this particular kingdom is where they got a lot of slaves that were taken to, of course, UK, and these people were taken by the British from, to UK as slaves, to the point that the people who were leading in this, it was like a dynasty at that time because it was extremely huge. Tumalako, tubawulira batabanye bo. So, this, like he said, that a lot of people were killed. They gathered these people, and most of them actually were taken to isolated areas. The major purpose of the British doing this was to wipe away, because for a long time, for a duration of their rule or control over Africa, they had never seen a group of people that was against them, typically against them. And still you can hear, when these guys went to court, the lawyer who was representing the monarchy, the British monarchy, of course, said that we do not have that tribe anymore. That tribe does not exist in Uganda because, for the record, all the people were massacred, all right? But a lot of people survived. That is something they didn't know about. That a lot of people survived, and if you still go in these areas, you realize that Most of their houses had a certain view, a certain style of construction that had a go down, and that was a sacred area. And if you still look in this the same place, you realize that most of the people here are not extremely old. Like you find extremely old people. Those old people, some of them ran and they entered INNOSSETU's kingdom at that time and they started families over there. But this is the kind of kingdom that does not forget. You will still realize that most of them say, despite we speak this, our forefathers told us we come from this particular side, because the place they ran to, they knew they would be protected because the king in that area, who was, by the way, a brother to this empire, of course, would protect them, because for him he was welcoming everyone who would run from each side where the British were hitting left and right. But so they gathered a lot of people whom they killed, and until now there is still evidence. But there is a particular place where they were collecting the remains of these people, and it was bought by the British. When, of course, they brought a new government, and they bought it from the president at that time, and they planted the trees. Even when you reach in that place, but they planted trees in order to kill the evidence, because they knew the more the trees grew and the soil, these cows will be barren. And if you still reach the same place called the Kabalega National Park, which the British named as Markshism National Park, there are still a lot of remains in that place. So the evidence of the British massacre within that empire is very visible, and they cannot deny having committed this. But the British were like, if we leave this region, if we leave the people in this region alive, we are definitely going to have a lot of people rebel. So they did it to show other people around the Eastern Africa that whoever rebels against our control is going to end up like these particular people. And of course, through this kingdom, you realize that the kings expanded and entered in other places of East Africa, and with the fear that the children they live back here are not going to survive. We have got a lot of princesses who have come back. Some of them are in the UK. They were taken as slaves to UK, and some of them were moved to the US. And they came back home, and despite them still living in those areas, they still recognize that kingdom and their father, because it's one of the
Area is
greatest
freezing
man in
again.
history.
But
Imagine.
you're good. What? Someone is calling.
So and then we this is where even the family of Kenyatta comes from, and all that. You can see how they tried so very much to distort and throw. Even in Tanzania, we got a lot who are direct sons and daughters of the king at that time who was resisting this colonial rule. We still have some down in Tanzania, enter the depth of Congo. And I should say that this man's blood was extremely strong, because most of his children never forgot their father and the legacy, and they proudly represent him to a certain extent, you know. But Innocent was asking, like, is it true about the dead bodies and all that stuff? We have seen a lot of crimes that the colonizers have committed on Africa's soil, really. And unless you're someone who doesn't know the strength of of course, as atrocities that were committed down here, actually, you will never understand the pain that people experience. You will never understand the pain of growing up when you have never seen you, because in Africa, people used to live even 100+ years. You never know the pain of someone growing up and you've never seen someone with gray hair in your family, and someone you just see graveyards. You will never understand the pain of getting to know that your forefathers were murdered for nothing, only for protecting their land and their people. It is you will never understand the pain that a lot. And by the way, if you check the history, everyone will probably say we did not have East African taken into UK and all that. It is so important for these people's identity to get lost, because what they were doing, they were taking children from the monarchy. And I can tell you, this was not only a small kingdom, it was an empire that now consists more than even two kingdoms. It even slopes down to Tanzania, some parts of Tanzania. So you can imagine how big this area was. It was continuing to the depth of Congo. You cannot imagine how big this place was. It was important to kill this history. Whenever people are talking about slaves, they don't talk about the people who were taken from this particular area, because it is important for them not to understand where they come from. All right. But of course, we had the British did not know. All right. Because, like I said, and no matter the plans people have for Africa, Africa fights for itself, it fights for its existence. It tries to make sure that Africans live, because if it wasn't so, I believe a lot of Africa wouldn't be existing. It would be among the most depopulated areas in the world, because Africans have been killed more than any other on this earth, and they're still being killed each and every day through different methods. But Africa's population keeps on skyrocketing. So when these people thought that we have finished with these others, and of course they did, when most of the people saw people being massacred, some of them tried to run, and of course entered to Kenya and some other places, and others it is told that the brother who of course invited, because that is the Buganda kingdom, where the capital of Uganda is Kampala right now, and one of the kingdom that everyone recognizes about Uganda, to the point that everyone thinks everyone in Uganda speaks Luganda because of the Buganda kingdom. When the brother who was in the Buganda kingdom, of course, realized what he had done, because at that time, even his father, actually, his father, because his father is the one who caused all this. And when the son came into power, it is him who killed the martyrs, those people who were converting into Christianity. And when they got to realize all this, they met at some point when the British had also turned against him. And he met the brother and he was like, "I'm so sorry about this. I'm so sorry about what happened. I didn't know." Because I think the British sweet talked him. His mission wasn't to hurt. His mission wasn't to hurt his brothers and his empire, but the British sweet talked him and he believed. And this has happened in many places where, and still now, guys, people still believe these people. Someone comes with religion, everyone is kissing their asses and they don't really know. Someone is sweet talking Africa. Until today, Africans are being sweet talked to, and they're complying with these things with hope. Because I don't know, maybe I don't know if we are so naive or we are so tattered, I don't know. But they sweet talked his brother, and I know by the time, and I know by the time this happened, it was too late for the British to withdraw from Uganda. And actually, until now, K. Williams is saying that very good information, Maria. Where did you learn this from? Because I don't. Whatever we tell, I know to lose aside, yo. Let's look at innocent. Judge where one base out. I gotta put your mouth. I was asking that where did I learn this from? I told you at the beginning of this discussion that some of these things affect me directly, extremely directly, more than I can say. So I know my history. I know what happened. I know everything because I'm a direct descendant of this man. He wasn't my king. He was my king and he was my grandfather. So I know. So they do not teach that at school over there. They don't. They don't teach that at school. And this is why, even when you, of course, there is no one who knows that we had people who resisted the colonial rule. All right? That is never in the history. It is not in the history. But we do have, and our ending, I know we never ended. We still existed, and probably one time, we don't know. But whew, people talk. It is okay for someone to say, sorry. It is okay for someone to say that, let's forget the past. Yeah. A lot of people keep saying that. Let's forget the past. It was, we didn't do that. People who did that don't exist. No. People who were affected really exist with that pain that will never go away. It is okay to forgive someone after doing bad. How are the people who went through this, how will they ever forget? At times, anyway, Innocent is the one who started this topic. I just don't like talking about these things at times, because they're a bit heavy. It is imagine you having peace and you not committing any crime, and someone just decides to come and all they want is to finish you for what you have, all right? For what you have, for the minerals you have, for everything that you hold sacred. And for the fact that even our history is never remembered. Nobody talks about this. People hardly talk about this. No, they don't. But anyway. So at times, some of us are usually bitter with some other things, not because we are told stories, but because we are living these stories up to now. We are living these stories. These stories are part of us. These stories have molded us, they defined us. The thorns and the scars that exist are going to be transferred from one generation to another until forever. So, where is the forgiveness and what should we forgive? People were saying you have to forgive, you have to let the past or whatever. What should we forgive really? It is easier to say that if you've never been affected. Anyway, I'll let Innocent to say something. And you want to get back when you meet the way to not. Obseponga bunawakutira one. I'll let Innocent to say something.
Thank you, Maria, for that, for knowing that huge history. They did not teach you that at those schools over there. Very good information, Maria. Where did you learn this from? But um, when we see that the scramble for Africa, that of course began with the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, and of course ended by the early 20th century. So these people sat down. They sat down. That's why at the times I normally I normally say that if at all we see, of course, our brothers from different African countries chasing out different, of course, colonial masters or different Bazungus or white people from their land and embracing the others, this is the history that they forget. That these people sit on a round table. They decide France go to Mali. They decide Russia go to Burkina Faso. They decide China be in Uganda. British keep existence in Kenya. So these are friends. These are people that, of course, know whatever that is going. These are people that plan for Africa. So at the time as I look at my friends from different, of course, African countries, they say, you know, we have now expelled the French people from our land and they are embracing Russians. It doesn't make sense because these people sit on the same table and do scramble, and scrambling still exists. Why is it that where we see France, we don't see their other countries? It is only France that we see there, just like when it was when they were scrambling for Africa during those days. You couldn't see German, where of course Britain is. You couldn't see France, where Britain is, because Africa is divided. They sat down, they divided the Africa according to different goals and opportunities that they see in Africa. So it is very important for as we Africans, as African presidents, as Ruto embraces USA, it is very important for him to learn that these people are the same. However much you may condemn the French people in being in Mali, being in Burkina Faso, but learn that these people are the same. These people sit on the same table and plan for Africa. Williams says that, and she's showing up at work now. Okay. So I was saying that the scramble for Africa began with the Berlin Conference, and that was 1884, and of course 1885, and ended. And actually, it partially ended in, of course, in the early 20th century when different countries, of course, gained the stupid independence that we are having today. So during this period of scramble and partition for Africa, European colonizers partitioned the Africa into spheres of influence. So colonies and various segments. They partitioned land from European capitals, which of course limited the knowledge of the geography, history, ethnic composition of Africa and identity. As long as these people divided the Africa, partitioned the Africa, Africa lost sense of unity, of identity, because we can no longer identify ourselves. Most of the things that we see here in Africa were renamed. When you look at most of the cities here, they are renamed after the Bazungu, after that partitioned Africa. So that is how we got lost our identity. And the Bazungus still remember our identity. So in many African countries, a significant portion of their population belongs to groups split by colonial partitions, religion, and tribalism. So during the onset of colonization, European powers preferentially dealt with African local leaders and, of course, chiefs. So these are the people that they approached at the very beginning, because these are the people that were leading, these are the people that were in power. That's why they collaborated a lot with these people. They promised them big positions in the colonial administration, as they called by that time colonialism, the new era, the modern era, the new era. So they promised chiefs with the guns, with gunpowder. They promised them with positions. They promised them with education. They promised them with a lot of things. And the chiefs sold out people in Africa. African chiefs, these are the most people that sold out our people. These are the same people that signed the treaties. I don't know, Maria. Did let me ask you this: did our African chiefs sign some of these treaties because of ignorance, because of what? Because there are some treaties that we see that were signed like which can't be signed. You can't come out to write about now today, and you say that you're going to sign a treaty like the 1900 a treaty that was signed in Uganda that of course, the Ugandan land to be divided into the Milo land and the Crown land. So, we see that colonial colonialism.
Most of these treaties, like particularly the one you are mentioning, the 19, okay, we are working, the 1900 Buganda Agreement, where land was divided and the British took a certain part of land and leaving the other to the kingdom and most of these people actually signed these treaties uh, because of conditions. During the Buganda 1900 agreement, actually people call it the Buganda agreement, but it exceeded the Buganda kingdom, right? At that time. And this is why we have got some parts in Uganda that actually are claimed by this particular kingdom that it belongs to theirs. We had a lot of people from different parts of Uganda. Remember that time the British were calling this the Buganda. They were not calling it Uganda, but like they wanted to turn this entire country to under one leadership, and I guess this is why these people were agreeing to this because now they thought they would control. We had people representing them from different places who came to sign these treaties. And this is why at times from this particular kingdom I've been mentioning, for it never signed any treaty with the British. That means in actual sense, it is not under Uganda. If at all they were to go to court, actually, they are not under Uganda because the territory of Uganda was named after the British people. All right, and it was after these different people came together and signed treaties that on the treaties on and off. Sorry. Now these treaties were signed. You see, this British actually. All these territories we talk about the boundaries. These boundaries are documented. They are documented, they are just not imaginary boundaries. Yes, we have got them imaginary because we can say Uganda passes at that mountain, it goes the other side, but they were documented, and it was Africans who signed on these things. You see, for you to have that name,
Yeah, yeah. All right. So
that
um
they're bringing Nena. You don't eat meat? Son, go. Me, I'm working. So, so these people actually, if at all we are to look at the documented facts that, of course, name the different areas of Uganda, according to the constitution and the law, this particular kingdom does not fall under Uganda because for them, they did not sign the agreement.
all right. Maria, can you hear me? Anyway, all right. So so when you look at Uganda itself, is land is divided in two parts. There is that land that is called the Milo land, which belongs to the king, to the kingdom, and there is land that belongs uh, there is land that belongs to the British, even up to now. It is the same thing the other guy was talking about. Maria was interviewing that for a president to be in these areas where British had its existence during colonial period, they have to sign that they are presidents of those countries. No matter why we saw King Charles are going to Kenya, trying to forge out apologies to of course to the Kenyans about the British atrocities in Kenya. But all this is fake. You can't, of course, there is nothing you can compensate with the life of someone. These people killed a lot of people. These people imprisoned. These people enslaved a lot of people in Africa. So there is nothing like, let it be money. You can't compensate someone. There is nothing that is equal to life. Nothing is equal to life. However much, what bring the worst part of it is like these people, they destroyed our identity by the demarcations Maria has been talking about, the imaginary lines, the documented imaginary lines they created here. It destroyed our identities. It has brought conflicts within countries. Uganda once had war with Tanzania because of land. And in Kenya, it is the same thing. Uganda once had a war because of land conflicts, territorial conflicts. This is where I cross from. This is where I cross because of the imaginary lines these people created. Because when they scrambled for Africa, whenever they would go somewhere, let it be the Buganda area or Uganda area, they could raise their flags. No other colonial master could, of course, could cross this entire part. I've not heard of any colonizer passing through like we hear that Germans passed through Uganda to go to Kenya. Once someone could go somewhere or could put his existence in a certain country or in a certain territory, no other European leader could, of course, interfere with those countries. And these are the same things that are still affecting Africa. Someone will tell you, I don't want Ugandans to cross here. For me, I'm from a certain African country. I don't want someone like to cross here. So these things are still affecting us even up to now. So we see that colonial powers employed underhand mechanism in territorial acquisition and boundary making, such as the deceit, fraud, intimidation, and bribery. Moreover, colonial masters utilized various techniques to influence African leaders and obtain a resource-rich land of Africa. The Berlin Conference like it legalized the partition of Africa. How can you like how can you see it? And of course, how can you sit somewhere in your circles and of course you make it illegal to conquer a certain continent where you don't belong? How can you sit with your friends and you decide you make it illegal? Actually, you make it illegal. So, because of course, colonialism to the white people, it was illegal. It was illegal to them, no matter what, no matter why they did whatever they did here in Africa, because it was legal for them. Colonialism was legal for them. It was legal to kill Africans. It was illegal to enslave Africans. It was illegal to introduce religion in Africa. It was legal to introduce tribalism. It was legal to create enmity within African people, within these Bazungus. It was legal for them by the Berlin Conference staff. It was illegal for these people. So we see that, of course, colonialists designed regional maps without providing any notification to the local African rulers who knew Africa very well. For them, they just drafted boundaries. They just created maps, their own imagination maps of the continent without consultation from the people that are living on the continent. So we see that, of course, these people made treaties among colonial powers to avoid resource competition. This is what I've been saying, that it was very impossible to see German in Uganda, to see the Germans in Uganda. It was very impossible because they signed treaties. Don't cross my territory. Once you see my flag is up, don't cross. Once you see the German flag up, once you see the French flag up, don't cross that territory. That is my territory. So that to reduce that competition, that resource competition, because these people, they came to exploit African resources, including human resource here in Africa, because they enslaved our ancestors. So it was very important for them to make treaties with these other, of course, friends, these other European leaders that don't cross. It is the same thing that is existing today. That I see, of course, West African countries, they are chasing out the French people, they are embracing the Russians. These are the same people. They are the same people. Why is it that the French are living freely without intervening in anything? Now the Russians are coming in West Africa. Because these people sign treaties, non-interfering treaties, non-interference treaties in the territory. Once they get a certain territory, don't interfere. That is my territory. Once you see my flag up, once you see those people, once you see people in an area, of course, where I'm putting the visitors, don't cross, because it is very important for them. You get it?
from the history we studied, I think, was it last week, when we are trying to say the so and so entered from the other side and so entered, yeah? And I was laughing at the history and how it was written, and how the people in Africa and East Africa were divided according to what they call tribes and whatever. When you are mentioning that, I was just laughing about it, because you cannot say, "Oh, so when they settled around the coasts or the borders of Kenya." There were no borders at that time. We had no borders. You cannot even in your history mention that when they had these people slow, then the Hamites and whatever stories you're creating. We do not have such things in history, in the true history. But of course, this is a proof that what the history that they're teaching in school was drafted by the same people who created the borders. That is why it is important for them to keep mentioning Cameroon. We did not have Cameroon. We did not have Uganda. We did not have Kenya. We did not have all the things they mention. The things, if you have to talk about the truthfulness of something, mention the real identity of that thing. Don't be mentioning involving the British borders and the German and the French borders, and then you are saying we are talking about the Genesis. You cannot intermix the Genesis and the present. You cannot intermix that. This is why everything about the history that people study in schools is not actually true. But in this one, we've even had wrangles. We went with some Africans.
Sorry about that, Maria. Maria is on and off. So, um, we see that of course these people created demarcations. These people created their territories, demarcated Africa. They even, of course, structured a map that we see as the map of Africa today. However, many errors were made due to the superficial knowledge of the continent and underdeveloped map that these people created. So, when we see that Lord, of course, Salisbury, the British Prime Minister in 1906, demonstrated this arbitrarily under the informed approach at the signing of the Anglo-French Convention on the Niger boundary in 1906, when he said that we, the British and the French, have been engaged in drawing lines upon maps where no white man's foot ever trod. So we have been giving away mountains and rivers and lakes to each other, only hindered by the small, of course, impediments that one never knew exactly where the mountains and rivers and lakes were. So this statement helps us to understand how colonial powers designed artificial African boundaries without the knowledge of the land and local communities in Africa. So these people did not consult from any African. They did not. So we see that European powers, of course, completed cartographic surveys of the territories through boundary commissions from 1900 and 1930, so which allowed the total control of the colonies. So it is within 1900, I said, where the Ugandan land was divided between the Kabaka land, which is called the Milo land, and the Crown land, which is the British land, of which the same issues, the same policies still apply even up to date. So this allowed the total control of the colonies. So, however, these focused solely on land control and disregarded the impacts of partitioning on ethnic groups. So, artificial borders split many laws related to ethnic groups into different colonial regions. In the Horn of Africa, for instance, the split of the Somalis into French Somaliland, British Somalis, Italian Somalis, Ethiopian Somalis, and the Somali region of the northern Kenya. Such colonial borders have massive effects on Somali people who share common culture, a similar way of life, and the same region, but live as separate citizens of Ethiopia, Djibouti, Kenya, and Kenya. Sorry. So similarly, Afar people of Ethiopia were split amongst Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Djibouti, and the Anua was split between Ethiopia and Southern Sudan. So actually, this clearly shows that Africa was separated, was splitted. African people used to live on the same land without separations that we see today. So besides improperly, of course, designed borders, European colonial powers employed the and rule method, divide and rule, and of course, assimilation policies, which forced the loss of social norms. Divide and rule, I repeat, forced the loss of social norms, identity, and social order for Africans. And it has never came to order since that time. We once lost norms, we actually we lost our identity from that time, and we have never seen it again. Though we fight so much, we fight hard to see our identity again, but it is very hard for us to see it. Very hard for us to see it. So, moreover, uh, uh, these policies, of course, instigated conflicts among the local people, dividing them even further. Consequently, uh, consequently strengthening colonial power. Doing so helped gradually develop hostile relations among borderland people in Africa. And the post-independent African government and political elites used these divisions for political means, even up to now. So some political elites in Africa affiliate more along ethnic lines, tribal lines, religious lines, and of course these play crucial roles in fueling tensions and escalating political disfranchisement. For instance, the Luo, these are of course these are people from from southern Sudan, the Luo Neo of southern Sudan, and of course the Jikani Neo of Ethiopia are the same ethnic group. These are the same people and live along, of course, Ethiopia's South Sudan border. Yet they are considered as two distinct, of course, ethnic groups with different nationalities and have developed hostility for years through resource competition, despite the effects of colonization and the artificial borders on borderland communities. African political leaders have not, of course, alleviated these problems, but rather used them as political instruments to strengthen their leadership. So, improper border design and of the partition of ethnic groups have contributed, of course, underdevelopment and instability in African states. In addition, the disconnect between center-peripheral relation demonstrated by the exclusion of some African states of borderland communities in economic development exacerbate the challenges. So the lack of economic, social, and political development and limited upward mobility exports the borderland communities to a number of human security problems, including widespread poverty across Africa, lack of infrastructure, limited education, and cross-border intergroup conflicts, which we have been seeing. I said we once had border conflicts with Kenya. We once had border conflicts with Uganda. We once had border conflicts with Tanzania. It's because of these demarcations that were made by the white people. So the improper design of the African borders and the use of these designs as political instruments have increased instability and underdevelopment for the borderland communities across the African continent today. So whether you like it or not, this is true and this is existing. We are seeing, we are testifying, we are eating, uh, on, of course, on the negative effects of colonialism. Even up to now, we are still feeding on this, on the negative effect of colonialism. However, African leaders, they don't wake up to see this. Rather, they embrace the same people to exploit the continent. These people exploited the continent during colonial times, and they are still exploiting the continent due to the leaders that we have, that, let me say that, that think that Africa can't sustain itself as a continent. These people started with, of course, forcing the Africans, forcing Ugandans to grow cash crops, taxing Africans, demarcating African lands, enslaving our ancestors, enslaving people, raiding villages and burning them. The video we started with, uh, of which was, of course, Maria's, the interview she had with that, guy, that is, of course, fighting for the compensation of, Maria's key, of course, kingdom empire stuff. The guy stated that, people were forced into, forced assimilation. People were baptized forcefully. It was very important for you to get baptized forcefully. It was very important for white people to name you, to give you a white name forcefully. If you don't want, they kill you. They don't care. You get killed if at all you don't pick up. They kill you. A lot of people were buried in the forests. Actually, the guy said that that's why we are actually in Maria's area. There are a lot of natural forests even up to now. They are covering skulls of the ancestors they killed just because they resisted colonialism in their area. And for those in my kingdom, for those that, of course, accepted the African chiefs within my kingdom that accepted colonialism, at the end they realized that the treaties they signed with the British were fake. They were not, of course, they were not about, elevating the standards of, African people or Ugandan people by then. So these people, they started rioting against these British people. The British killed these chiefs. The British exiled these chiefs and kings. We are still suffering because of the policies, the colonial policies that were here during colonialism, starting with the land policy here in Uganda, starting with the land policy. And it might not be in Uganda only, it might be in all the British, the former colonies of the British. The land policy is still a huge problem here in Uganda. People are killing themselves because of land, because it is divided into two: crown land and minor land. The minor land is for Kabaka, is for a king, and the crown land it is for British. For British now, for what? Why is it that someone from Britain now owns land in Uganda? Why do the British own land here? Why can't we wake up? Why can't we be able to see this? Why can't we see this? So these people did a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. So we are still, of course, feeding, like I said, we are still feeding on on of course on the negative effects of their colonialism, the policies they introduced, the religion they brought here. At the beginning of this, of course, this show, I said that religious differences started immediately. Religious differences they are as old as their existence, as the existence of religion here. I used to ask myself, if at all religion was so important for African people, why is it that it is dividing Africans? If at all the education they brought here is so important, why is it divided? Why is it discriminative? If at all the boundaries they made for us here, why is it that they make us separated differently? They make us separated. Go ahead, get a go.
Nkyasamba kudduka. Obudde nga bwo tebugenda. Muno banjagaza ki? Fena mudaddeko. Simanyi nawe ntandikira, but I must be told. Of course, we know. I believe that when these people were colonizing Africa, they did not believe that one time they will leave, because most of the things, their actions showed that they wanted to stay forever. And one of the reasons why the British actually withdrew, because they had lost back home, they were losing power, because most of these colonizers left Africa because they were losing power. They were investing everything they had. They were investing it here in Africa, okay, and which typically showed that most of their interest was here. Yes, first they came with exploitation, of course, taking our timber. They cut down trees, shipping the trees to their home area. And if you look at UK itself, or if you look at where particularly the British Kingdom is, you realize that they try so much to leave an African touch within their environment. They decorated everything so African. So African. Okay, this is a typical, show. This is a typical thing that shows. Despite everything, they didn't want to lose that. And then we know very well that the exploitation of Africa and these people, first they wanted to exploit Africa and then they wanted to stay. That is when they started constructing their permanent buildings, running the banks, having identifying some cities as their own, and so on and so forth. Because they tried, and I think maybe they thought as they exploit Africa, it is going to run dry shortly. But they realized each and every day a lot of new beautiful things were discovered. So they started changing their mind that they wanted to settle here. They wanted to settle in Africa. Now they stopped thinking about going back home. All they wanted was to acquire a big position. We have some people, by the way, like we have some Bazungus in Uganda whose parents were colonizers and they refused to go back. And give even the difference is that when you look at their skin, you get to know they are not Africans. But
balage babamanyi gye badda.
all about Bamani. Kuba abantu abasinga abaleetebwanga eno baalinga banene mu gavumenti. Tebamalanga galeetaleeta. So as you are heading to our home, there is a monument there where the British made one of nja kuyita olumwa bwenkubirewo akafaananyi. Even people call it kukijjukizo. So bateekawo n'akatebe. It's on the roadside. So you will see the British, the guy's face, and the people he met there in storage. And those were the time when these people came and they wanted to overthrow and take over. Their biggest interest wasn't actually interest wasn't actually the Buganda kingdom, but the Buganda kingdom was easy for them to take over. They were targeting this particular kingdom because it would even stretch to the parts of Tanzania and also enter Congo. And Tanzania having the coastline, in Congo having a lot, at that time Congo had a lot of timbers and other minerals. And this particular area had white sand, it also had salt and other minerals, and it was their center of interest. Unfortunately, they could not make it. Though with the time and after, of course, cutting the borders and, of course, creating the boundaries and the certain kind of administration that they had to put. But if at that time, the problem, people didn't even know the law. The people didn't even know the law at that time. Otherwise, if we had people who knew the law, remember this whole constitution and bullshit thing was drafted by the British. A lot of Africans were agreeing about this thing. Like I said, if these people knew the law, they wouldn't even, right now, they wouldn't be part of Uganda. They would not. This kingdom itself was taken straight up from some parts of Uganda. It goes to Congo. It rotates, it takes some parts of Tanzania. You can imagine how big it was. And it would be fine for them to say that we are not under Uganda because for them, they did not sign the agreement that bounds them under the borders or the boundaries that the British created. No one signed that agreement. So it is so fine for them actually to even go to court and say we are not part of any of these borders. Because for us, we did not sign any treaty with the British people. And they will be right in whichever way. Except that we all know how that will end. Because now this is the place where a lot of minerals are found. Definitely that is going to cause chaos and we're going to have a lot of people losing their lives because of this. Uganda will not want to let go. The government won't want to let go, and now the chaos will be so, it will be like, I guess, another genocide, just like the British did. So we had a lot of people signing these treaties unknowingly, and until now they are still tied in these things that they signed, and even the people who signed them did not know what they were signing. First of all, these things were written in English, and the few people comprehended the English statements. You can say that until now we have got people who misunderstand what English is all about. Someone reads something and understands the way they do, and others is denying. No, that it doesn't mean that when someone says it does. So everyone absorbs this language differently. Just like King Leopold said, teach them how to read and write, but don't teach them how to understand what they are reading and what they are writing. So this was very visible INNOSSETU. This was very visible during during the time of signing these agreements, these deals, these contracts. It was very visible because people were being told it means this and this, and they were just signing, not knowing the repercussions that are behind their signatures and the agreements they were making with the colonizers at that time. Now, this is the biggest because there is no way someone will sign out their land. There is no way someone will give their land to someone else. Oh, yeah. Genda kuddukako. Nkuddukeko.
Historical justice which has refused to be addressed for more than 57 years since this country got independence. That's why we are operating in this sub-region. This sub-region is comprised of 8 districts. But now, even the land that was annexed to Uganda is bigger than what we buy under the agreement which was drawn between Uganda, allies, and the Queen of England that still affects us now. We are in courts of law in order to adjudicate and get judicial regulations over this historical injustice that has been politicized for so many years since this country got independence in 1962. We have seen if we don't address this, even the future of Uganda is nowhere. Because you cannot build the foundation of the country based on a lie. So many things we have discovered that even the governments or the presidents of this country are actually administrators of the colony.
Exactly.
They were told, as if actually, I was told there is an agreement which any president of Uganda signs before he's allowed to be the president of the republic separately in London. And that's why each and every election, the president has to fly to London and append his signature there. These things are real. We want the world to know. People knew that Hitler killed so many Jews, and they thought that was the worst genocide. We are now telling the world British soldiers killed 2.4 million Banyoro here, subject the rest into forced assimilation. They did all sorts of things, including force them to change their names, renaming their villages, baptizing them. Actually, even went to the religion,
So religion
the religion,
factors.
yes. Even the priests by then could not actually baptize a child having a Kinyoro name. So
Hold on,
it was war.
hold on there. Now,
Yes.
if you listen to this strongly, we've had these very ideas happening where in the United States of America, where the black people have been marginalized and so much surprised to the way that they do not have their ancestral names, and that's why black people really don't know where they come from. I feel like this was trying to be brought here on this strong kingdom. By the way, for the record, this is one of the greatest kingdoms in entire of the world, I should say. But it was marginalized and so suppressed by the colonizers and the government, which is acting in response with the colonizers at hand. But yes, when he tells us that the names, they were not allowed to be baptized having their native names, that means they do not want them to have their identity as people from this kingdom. Should we have that raises a question of you, the viewers? Did the British want to strictly and successfully accomplish in finishing this entire kingdom with no location or with no identification and to make it perish from the entire surface of this world? That's the question actually I posed in my mind when he told me they used not to allow them to have their native names when they are being baptized, because our native names identify and signify who we are and where we come
Like
from.
even going to school, by the way, it was war. You wouldn't have gone to school with a Kinyoro name. They would not allow. But actually, we have just discovered that the Britain was avoiding of any civilized Munyoro who would dig into their archives and found out all this genocide that was committed here. After committing this genocide, the British directed, and it is still, and their directive is still operational, that most of our ancestral land being turned into game reserves, forest reserves, because our ancestors used to build in a communal process. One clan could like occupy a square mile, and another one can occupy another 2 square miles. So we were actually we used to build in clans. So these people came and raided those clans as they are being organized and built. And then after killing all of them, they directed that now this land is now a forest reserve. Even up to today, you will find in a country called Uganda, it is only Bunyoro sub-region that has the most, I mean, so many forest reserves and game reserves in this country, Uganda. But what were they trying to do? They were intending to hide so that this forest could actually the trees can grow up and bury the skulls of these people
Or the
of
genocide
the
acts
genocide
that
so that the
happened.
evidence would cease. And indeed, when these people dig in these game reserve, they discover a lot of skulls,
Yeah, the
skeletons, yes,
skeleton.
yes, broken pots and everything, knives and everything. So this is where what they were intending to hide. But the good thing we have uncovered it, and when we brought it to the light of the world, the Queen was here in 2007. She decided to conceal this through the government and directed that a amount equivalent to 700 million pounds be channeled through the government, the central government, and be given to us in order to silence other colonial areas where these people committed crime so that we should not awaken them. Now we want the world to know.
So now
We
we
are
are
now awakening the world actually by doing
mm,
this.
yeah, hold on.
Yes.
So now we are looking at a major funny. I should call it a little bit funny, but again, so very appalling on a Sherman. When you look at the Queen herself coming along in this very country and trying to bribe these people not to speak out what actually
Exactly.
happened. I always tell you that we do not sell who we are, and an African, and more especially Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom, is not out for sale. We do not negotiate our heritage, and they do not negotiate who they are. They're here to protect their legacy. So it's so very quite appalling for the king herself to come down and think that he's going to give them all that sum of money, which was later. Let him continue telling you what
Of
happened.
course,
Oh
the
my.
money was channeled through the government, and the government decided to use it. Without shame, the government decided to use the 700 million pounds that it was supposed to have been paid to us as preparation fees, and then use it for itself. So we are actually calling the British. We are calling on the British citizens. It was Gordon Brown, by then who was the Prime Minister, who concluded this with the Foreign Affairs Minister of Uganda and with a group of politicians from the Euro sub-region who had no mandate even to
To
conclude,
decide.
to decide the deal between us and the Queen, and they elected the funds to fund it. It never reached us. That's why we are constituting a team. We have already constituted a team to investigate this matter.
Oh, he must have went out there. The internet went out, guys. I'm just showing up, guys. Who's still in the jibber jab and K? I'm gonna see if their internet is gone out, and I'll end the show because I don't know what the hell they's even talking about. 'Cause, no, I was over there with Demore on the other channel. Hope everybody's doing good over here. All right, should they pop back up? So you guys already gone. You guys already left the building. Uh, they must have been down for a minute. Uh, I'm gonna cut off this show, guys.